Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 7th, 2021 Alpharetta City Council meeting. Go ahead and call this meeting to order and note for the record that all members of council are present and accounted for. And if you're able, I would ask you to please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to begin our meeting. First item up on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda. And the consent agenda consists of three separate items, the first being the council meeting minutes from our meeting on May 24th, 2021. Second item is the financial management report for the month ending April 30th, 2021, and an alcohol beverage license application, which was PH-21-AB-16 AATIF Enterprises USA Incorporated, DBA Milton Food Market, 2190 Old Milton Parkway, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30009. Is there anyone who would like to remove anything from the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell and a second by Councilmember Burnett to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Second item up on tonight's agenda is partner agency updates, and we have some distinguished guests here this evening. If representatives from the North Fulton Community Improvement District would please come forward, and Director Sasevich from Public Works.
I don't know if I'll call myself distinguished, but Kristen Winsler is here.
I was talking about them.
I would think so, yes. Appreciate that. Kristen Winsler is here from the North Fulton CID, as well as Eric Bosman, the consultant from Kimley Horn with the North Fulton CID, to present Blueprint 3.
Hey y'all, good evening. Thank you so much for having us. Like Pete said, I'm Kristen Winsler with North Fulton CID, and I have with me Eric Bosman, our North Fulton CID consultant with Kimley Horn. We, about every 5 to 7 years, we update our master plan. We're now on our third iteration, which we have creatively called Blueprint 3. And every time we go through this process, we go through stakeholder meetings, we collect a lot of data, a lot of input from all of our partners. So a huge thank you to Kathy and Pete, who met with us several times throughout this process. We've been doing it about a year now, so we're close to the end. However, we wanted to make sure to share with you all our project list to make sure we get your input. If you have any feedback, we'd love to hear it. So thank you again. We'll make this short and sweet, and Eric will go ahead and just go through the projects, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kristen, and good evening, Mayor and Council. As Kristen said, since 2007, the North Fulton CID has based its investments on its Blueprint Master Plan. So as part of this Blueprint 3, we wanted to very briefly give you an update on the tenets of the master plan and the projects that are under consideration for CID investment over the next 5 to 7 years. As part of Blueprint 3, the CID has gone back and looked at its vision for the district as a whole. And one of the things you may notice is that that vision has really broadened out a little bit. Typically, the CIDs have spent a lot of their money in the Atlanta region focused on our roadway infrastructure. With the investments that have been made in roadways throughout the North Fulton district, the CID, with the city's partnership, is really turning its eye to a greater breadth of projects now. So it's not only focused on access, how do we maintain access to and from the 400 corridor, make sure that we're providing good mobility east and west across the corridor, and investing in emerging technologies that help us manage traffic. The CID is also very focused now on character development within the district. How do we promote the district's character and enhance its sense of place and incorporate technology in some of its wayfinding and people-moving systems? How do we continue to enhance the character and development of the district? Now, zoning, ordinance, policy, that's all the purview of the city. What the CID is interested in doing is working with local owners and investors to make sure that we're continuing to get high quality walkable development, particularly within the commercial district, and focused on strategic expansion of the CID's borders so that there are more areas of the district that the CID can invest in And then the CID is also turning its attention more towards walkability, bikeability, and multimodal connectivity within the district. While that includes pedestrians and bicyclists today, as planning continues to happen up and down the 400 corridor, that also could turn its attention to investment in transit stations and enhancing access and walkability in and around those transit stations as well. While those are the guiding principles, there are 14 projects that the CID has in its Blueprint 3 work plan that are within the boundaries of the city of Alpharetta. Now, all of these colored dots on the map indicate a different project opportunity. Just to hit the highlights, and most of these projects you all will be familiar with because they're already active investments or opportunities that you've considered as part of some of your recent funding opportunities. So those projects in the North Point Haynes Bridge area include the Davis Drive extension, the potential to enhance or widen Maxwell Road, of Hembry Road, to extend Maxwell Road. Now, that's a little bit of a bigger picture vision, but right now Maxwell Road on the west side stops before you get to Georgia 400 at the Fulton Science Academy. As you think about connectivity in the future, there may be a need to extend Maxwell across 400 depending on what happens with the redevelopment potential of the mall property. So one of the things that's in the CID sites, and it's a longer term project, but is thinking about that connectivity through the mall site and even potentially eventually connecting over to Old Alabama. That's a big vision, that's a bigger picture piece, but something the CID is interested in studying. You'll see several projects that have to do with the Alpha Loop, with enhancing sidewalk and bicycle connectivity in the North Point area, the pedestrian crossing of Haynes Bridge Road just west of Georgia 400, which is a project the city is actively working on, as well as investments in green space and public space in and around the North Point district. If we move a little bit north, there are 8 additional projects. If the CID were to expand into downtown, then the enhancement of Milton Avenue would be one of the first projects that the CID would look to invest and help with. There's a notation A13 about re-upping and enhancing, revisiting the Windward Parkway LCI that was part of the Georgia 400 State Route 9 Livable Centers Initiative, which is almost 10 years old now, as the Windward District has sort of gone through some change and seeks to sort of reinvent itself from a commercial standpoint. Then there are projects that have to do with the connection to Tradewinds Parkway and the future impact of the new crossing at Tradewinds, potential connectivity of Dryden Road into the Marconi area from North Point. That's been a connection that's been looked at for a number of years but has not moved forward. And then again, a number of multimodal improvements, including Kimball Bridge, Alpha Loop enhancements on the west side of 400, and the Windward Greenway out to Marconi. Now, that's a long list of projects. There are 14 individual projects there. Obviously, that's a big wish list, a big to-do list. We may not be able to get to all 14 of those projects over the coming years. And as you know, the CID not only impacts Alpharetta, but also includes portions of the city of Roswell and Milton as well. So one of the things we wanted to show you is that we have gone in and evaluated all of the projects that are in Blueprint 3 and put them in priority order, which is this last chart. You'll notice the top 5 of these projects are projects that the CID is already actively invested in, including improvements on Davis Drive, Windward Parkway, the Alpha Loop, and the Encore Gateway Greenway Park that's currently under design. The next 5 projects are really our short list with investments on North Point, Old Milton, Windward, Haynes Bridge, and Tradewinds. And then the bottom 6 to 7 projects are those longer term, more ambitious improvements on Kimball Bridge, Dryden, Hembry, Milton Avenue downtown, and then those bigger long-term connections having to do with Maxwell and with Hembry. So I know that's very high level. It's racing through a bunch of projects. We wanted to make sure that we had these projects on your radar because essentially the CID doesn't want to have projects on its short-term list that the city is not interested in any way, shape, and form, even though we recognize that the priorities of the business community may not be perfectly aligned with the city. We do want to make sure that we're being transparent about what the business community and the CID are looking in. We welcome your input and thoughts on if any of these projects may need to move up or down the list, or if we need to rethink any of these from a priority standpoint. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I will pause the presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions. Would love your input.
Thank you, Mr. Bosman. Do we have any questions for representatives on the CID? Councilman Burnett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Eric, good to see you, and Kristen. Well, you guys have 2 and 3 are the, 3 and 4, Old Milton to North Winds on the Alpha Loop and Alpha Loop Jackson Healthcare. Does the CID's intention to mostly do design work or contribute to actual construction should dollars be available? And is there any way to consolidate those into the same one? North Winds is across the street from Jackson Healthcare.
So the reason that they are two separate ones are those are actually the portions of Alpha Loop that we've already contributed some design dollars, which is why they raised on the list. They're also some of the only portions that are actually in the CID district right now. I think we're open to, I think we want to get it done, so we're open to investing in the project. I think the CID likes to be the last mile funding, as does everyone else. So I think if you were to come to us with the right ask, I think we would be open to any and all ways to just get it done and get it built so people can use it. Does that answer the question? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilman Hypes?
Hey, Eric, I'd like to hear just a little bit more about the D1 project, looking at the map. Does any of that involve the stormwater green area at North Point? And whatever elaboration you can provide, I'd be interested.
Certainly, those are great ones to point out, Councilman Heights. Normally, the CIDs throughout the Atlanta region have not really invested very heavily in green space and public space. But I think this CID in particular sees some of the vision that the city has for reinventing the North Point corridor and is open to both the Gateway Park at the intersection of Encore and North Point, as well as the potential Eco Commons and Bioretention Park on the north side of the mall. Now, the CID has a limited amount of funds. They may not be able to close the full gap, and most of the time the CID is attempting to leverage its funds against other funding sources. But both of those green spaces are opportunities that the CID sees potential that if those investments are made, it will raise both the value of the properties around it and the likely quality of development in those areas. And that would be to both the CID and the city's benefit to do so.
And I see it's underway. Any thoughts on what the city partnership with CID on something like that looks like, especially with the stormwater park or?
Yeah, I think because it's a new project type, I don't think we can really speak to that today. I would expect that the CID board would want to see something similar to some of the Alpha Loop agreements because they're more of that pedestrian public space sort of feel, but it's a little bit of uncharted territory, so I don't think we really know.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Well, I just wanted to thank y'all for coming. We appreciate it. It's been a great partnership over the years, and we look forward to continuing those efforts. And I appreciate you putting it in a concise document so we can review it with our priorities as well.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So that'll wrap up the partner agency updates this evening, and we'll move on to the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. First item up under public hearing is PH-21-09/V-21-15 Brady/201 Marietta Street. Mr. Woodman, I believe you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item before you this evening is a change to previous conditions of zoning and a variance on a 0.83 acre property. Property was previously approved in 2014 as part of a 5 acre, 32 unit townhome development called Windsong Townhomes. The requested change would allow for a 6 unit townhome building to be replaced with 2 single family detached homes. The proposed density for the 2 homes would be 2.41 dwelling units per acre. And a variance is requested to reduce the eastern side setback on Lot 2 from 10 feet to 0 feet. I'll show you that on the site plan here shortly. And the property is located at 201 Marietta Street. That's on the north side of Marietta Street, just west of Margene Way. I have the location map up on the development. This is the Windsong development, so it's the property just across the stream. to the west. Property is currently undeveloped, separated by Windsong by a stream. Surrounding properties are zoned community unit plan to the north and west. That's the Wills Common subdivision. R8A/D to the east, which is Windsong Townhomes. And then Office Professional to the south. It's an office building. Property applicant proposes changes to the 2014 conditions approved on this property to allow for a single-family detached product, so previous conditions limited to townhome development only. Of course, to amend the conditions to tie the approval to the applicant's site plan and the elevations. Previous approvals on the property required a Georgian style architecture. The applicant is now looking to use one of the approved downtown architectural styles. And then a change to condition to address setbacks. This is the site plan that was approved for the Windsong development. This is the subject property here. Oops, excuse me. So the townhomes were developed along Margine Way, and the second phase of development was never completed by the developer. So the applicant has acquired this property and is looking to remove the six-unit townhome building and replace that with 2 detached homes. This is the applicant's proposed site plan for the 2 homes. Most of the development is on the southern half of the properties. So we have Lot 1 and Lot 2. Lot 1 is approximately 0.42 acres. Lot 2 is a little bit smaller, 0.39 acres. Homes are shown to be 2 stories, about 4,300 square feet. Both homes have a portico leading to a 3-car garage at the rear of the property. That's what you see here, and with the garage at the rear. The existing tree canopy on the property is primarily located along the stream. So you've got the stream that runs along the east side of this property and separates the property from the Windsong townhome development. And then there's trees on the north end of the property. There are 3 specimen trees identified in the applicant's tree assessment, and one of those 3 specimen trees is proposed to be removed. That's a pine. There's also underground infiltration systems depicted at the rear of both of those properties. This is the rendering that the applicant submitted of the 2 homes. The homes reflect a neoclassical and Italianate style. Homes would have a brick exterior with metal roof accents and a large front porch. This request was shown to the public at the community zoning meeting on May 12th. There were some questions from Windsong residents regarding the impacts to trees and the impacts to the stream. Staff has reviewed the applicant's proposal and finds that it can support the request for changes to previous conditions of zoning and variance. The proposal would result in a density reduction, and the single-family detached product is desirable. The variance should not cause a substantial detriment to the public good. The nearest building in the Windsong development to the applicant's eastern property line is across the stream and over 120 feet away. Forgot to mention show you the variance. So the variance for the side setback was related to Lot 2 only, so it does not apply to Lot 1. If approved, it would only apply to Lot 2, and it is along this eastern property line. Of course, this eastern property line abuts an undeveloped property that is located between the stream. This is the center line of the stream, and then the associated buffers go out to this red dashed line. The applicant is currently in talks with the Windsong HOA to potentially purchase this property. The applicant has indicated if he is successful in purchasing this property, that property would be incorporated into Lot 2. With that, staff is recommending approval, subject to 9 conditions. The condition number 1, the .83 acre property shall be zoned R8A/D and limited to single-family detached homes. Site shall be developed substantially as depicted on the site plan prepared by E303 dated May 10th, 2021. Condition 2 ties the home elevations that I showed you to the submitted elevations by 3 Elks Design dated 5/7/21, final approval by DRB. Condition 3 requires a decorative low wall or hedge with decorative columns to frame the front yards of both homes. Condition 4, eastern side setback on Lot 2 shall be 0 feet. Condition 5, developer shall supplement 5-foot landscape strip planting requirements with evergreen screening material as approved by staff. And the 5-foot landscape strips are the internal property lines, so along the internal property lines. That condition goes on to say off-site evergreen screening material shall be required along the east side of Lot 2 if approved by the property owner. So that screening would be required along this property line since there's if there were a 0-foot setback, of course those plantings would have to be off-site, so the property owner, if the applicant is not the property owner, would need to approve that. Condition 6 limits the tree or enforces the tree protection as depicted on the site plan prepared by E303. It goes on to require off-site trees 243 and 244. Those are the 2 trees that are off-site to the east with their critical root zones shown around them. They're both water oaks. One is a 25-inch water oak and one is a 14-inch water oak. Requires that those trees be protected and encroachment on the critical root zone shall not exceed 20% as approved by staff. It's my understanding that the applicant will be asking to increase the max encroachment from 20% to 30%. I did have a chance to speak to the city arborist about that, and he is comfortable with that, the applicant's request to increase that. He believes that the tree care plan, the species of the tree is suitable for that amount of encroachment, and a tree care plan can help with the survivability of those trees. Condition 7, it relates to a 2014 condition number 4, and I'll show that to you. So these are the conditions from 2014 approval. Condition number 4 and the 2014 conditions were related to the stream buffer variance that was granted at that time. It required a 35-foot non-impervious and 25-foot undisturbed stream buffer, and it had requirements for that buffer to be replanted to buffer standards, and invasive species shall be removed and replanted with native species. That has been done on the eastern side of the stream, and what we have a new condition in new condition number 7, that developer shall verify compliance with the previous required stream mitigation. And I'm specifically referencing 2014 condition number 4, and additional mitigations such as increased buffers, runoff reduction measures, water quality treatment, or a combination of the above shall be provided as approved by staff. 8, infiltration shall be located, and it should say on each lot with the least impact to existing trees as approved by staff. That's specifically addressing the infiltration system shown at the rear of each property. We just want to make sure that those are located so that they're not impacting additional trees on the property. And then condition number 9 ties states that the previous conditions of zoning related to the 2014 approval on this property, the Marietta Street townhome shall remain in effect except as modified in the conditions above. And that concludes the staff presentation. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
Mine is referring to number 4, the eastern side setback on Lot 2 shall be 0 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's under the condition that they are not able to acquire the adjacent property, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you're asking for a buffer along, a straight buffer, but should they require that, the buffer can go further closer to the creek, is that right?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay. And there's some confusion, I think, and rightly so. They're worried that trees will be taken down excessively along that stream bank, and that is not the case, correct?
The applicant's site plan shows the trees that are to be removed with the X through them. So they're not currently showing any trees off-site to be removed, except for ones that are straddling the property line. So any tree removal on this property besides the two that are called out in the condition would need to be negotiated between the HOA and the applicant.
So they're actually adding more trees to
They are.
to the stream buffer?
Yes, that would be required as part of that stream buffer revegetation.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions for staff from council? Thank you, Mr. Woodman. Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Great to be with you this evening. Thank you for a great presentation there, Michael, on the opportunity. You know, last year was a weird year, and I probably had conversations around your house like I did with mine, that after 16 years, you start with, maybe we ought to redo the kitchen. And then it starts with, let's do something different downstairs. Let's redo the basement. Next thing you know, that quickly accelerates, just let's get a new house. So that's what kind of happened at my house. My son went off to college, so we started to kind of look at what are some opportunities to get a new house. And one thing, we were walking around downtown and wanted to move down and experience everything in downtown. Alpharetta is just such a great area to be in, a lot of energy. But one thing we wanted is kind of be close to Wills Park. And as I was walking by this lot, picked up the phone, I called Lindsay Warren, who owns the property at 204 Marietta Street and used to own most of their, like where the beach houses are, where Penn Hodge owns that property. Used to own most of that at one point. So we kind of went into, next thing you know, I'm under contract to purchase the property. And the idea was exactly what the request is tonight, to be able to purchase the property and to request a change of conditions, which would reduce that density from 6 down to 2 homes. The 2 homes will be pretty much just like 12 on Canton. So we went on 12 on Canton, which is very, very popular if you've gone through there and taken a look at it. The 2 homes are exactly, well, I won't say exactly because I don't want to get into trademark or copying anyone's house, but we have our own architects, but very similar to what you have there. And some of those is, you know, the Italian design we kind of had, very similar to this type of home that would be there. And then the other one would be very similar to that home. Just to give you an idea of what that would look like for the home. I think the street is like a quiet street. It's really nice to be on. Can't hear traffic, can't hear anything else. And one thing is you have Wills Park really close. So the idea was to build the homes. I want to live there. That would be my primary residence. I'd be the one kind of closest to the stream. So through this process, I've reached out to all the neighbors and talked to most of the neighbors and really engaged some good conversations with the Windsong HOA. Maybe the president, or Abby here, he's here tonight. And we're talking through that. Then the idea came up, well, maybe I would acquire additional piece of property on their side, which started off with just a 20-foot section. And next thing you know, we're talking about a natural boundary, which ended up being the stream, which made a lot of sense. And to me, it made a lot of sense because, you know, for privacy and everything else, just acquiring that piece. And it's really from the front of Marietta Street, and the stream kind of curves back. So it's kind of a weird area. Most of it's a buffer, which I can't touch. And then ended up going to their meeting for the HOA, met all the neighbors, and was talking through it. Some way in that, you know, good intentions sometimes get a little confusion, and, you know, why do you want to buy this property unless you want to, you know, take down all the trees, or you're going to move the house? The plan is what you see it. That's exactly it. And the idea to acquire that property would just to be to beautify it. And the idea is, what I told them is, when you're coming down Marietta Street, they have some really nice landscaping out front. I wanted to kind of copy that same kind of presentation, same streetscape. So when you're coming down from Pure on that side, you kind of open that up, and it would be more screening. And the idea is, what kind of you're adding back is more evergreens and things like that. So that was, and in that, there's kind of 2 different things. The request tonight, and then maybe this might happen. I don't know, because the homeowners have to vote on that. But I just wanted to share that color with you and a little background. But as far as all the conditions, absolutely agree with all the conditions. The one request is for number 6, to have that increase of the critical root zone from 20% to 30%. The idea behind there is you will create the extra care for those trees, but most trees along a water source, those trees, those roots naturally go to the water source. So most of the roots in the critical zones go down to the water zone, which is the stream, which is on the other side of the tree, and I don't think it's going to have any major impact to those trees. And I think the city arborist kind of agreed with that, and Michael shared that. So without further ado, just thank you so much for my consideration tonight. Happy to take any questions if you have them.
Any questions from the applicant or for the applicant from council?
Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there's anyone here that would like to come forward and speak on this zoning issue, now's your chance to do so. And just a reminder that if you would, please just state your name and your address for the public record.
My name is Bob Burgess. I live at 152 Marietta Street. When I received the letter from Mr. Brady, and I later contacted him just to try to find out more about his project. You know, the Burgesses have been on Marietta Street since the mid-1950s. In fact, we are the last residents on Marietta Street. Everything else has been converted to commercial or whatnot. So as the last residents on Marietta Street, I would much rather see 2 nice homes built than 6 more condos. We've been here a long time, and like Mr. Brady said, it's a quiet street. I think that it would really help Marietta Street to have those 2 big, nice homes.
Thank you, sir. If there's anyone else that would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your chance. Seeing no one, I'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to approve PH-21-09/V-21-15 Brady/201 Marietta Street with the conditions 1 through 5 as reviewed by Mr. Woodman. The change to condition number 6, critical root zone encroachment, change from 20% to 30% as approved by staff. No change to condition number 7. Condition number 8, infiltration shall be located on each lot is the addition to that condition, and no change to condition number 9. That's the end of my motion.
Second. So that was a motion to approve the application by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Councilman Binder. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for the vote to approve PH-21-09/V-21-15 Brady 201 Marietta Street with conditions as outlined by Councilwoman Richard. All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. It does pass unanimously. Congratulations. So that'll wrap up the public hearing item for Marietta Street. We'll move on to the public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 budget and millage rate levy. Director Harris.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the first public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 budget. Later this evening, we will have the reading of the ordinances and approval of the ordinance for both the budget and the millage rate. But under state law, we always have a public hearing aspect to this just to ensure we follow state law. I'll make a few comments on the budget itself. Obviously, we've had 3 workshops on the budget. There's been no changes in this latest version from our last workshop. The proposed millage rate is staying the same as the previous year, from 4.935 for the general fund, 0.815 for the debt service fund, for a total of 5.75 mils. Obviously, we had to right-size the budget as far as expenses and that after the effects of COVID had on the revenues, et cetera. But with that said, we still were able to appropriate close to $1 million in new initiatives when you take the Quint operations and also picking up the DEA 3 personnel in the general fund. So I thought the departments really did a great job at working and along with the direction the council set to get those initiatives in this year's budget. It also is a budget that includes about $48 million in capital initiatives. T-Splost is 25 million of that. That's the remaining funds that we're sitting on, plus the one more year through March 31st of the T-Splost $1 is about 25 million. American Rescue Act for 2 tranches is in there at 6.6 million. Then we have a couple grants, the Transportation Improvement Program grant funding for the North Point Parkway. It's about 5 million of that, and then it leaves about 11 million from the general fund and some of the other funds, like impact fee funds, funding recurring type projects. So it's a pretty extensive and comprehensive capital improvement program in that budget. That's it. That's the update.
Any questions from council at this time? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on the 2022 budget, now's your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion for council? Okay, my apologies. We're not voting on this item tonight. And just to clarify, Mr. Regas, is next week's meeting at a different time? Doesn't state law require us to have a separate time for one of the public hearings?
I believe that's only if it calls for a third public hearing, if we have to advertise a tax increase, even though.
Oh, okay. Well, we're not doing that, so we don't have to have a separate time next week. Just wanted to clarify.
We don't meet next week. Our next meeting is the 21st. Okay.
Thank you. I just remembered there was an oddity where we, instead of the normal 6:30, we typically would have to have one at like 6 or later at 7 or something like that. So,
That's right.
And I know some of our council members would often be thrown a curveball when that happened. So I want to make sure everybody was on the same page if there was a time change. So that'll wrap up public hearing item for this evening, and we'll move on to old business. And the old business first item is PH-21-10 Unified Development Code Text Amendment, Historic Preservation Incentive Zoning. This is the second reading. Kathy Cook, I believe you have this item. Mr. Thomas, please stand at the ready.
Mayor and Council, there are no changes from the first reading.
Any questions from council about that? Thank you, Ms. Cook. Mr. Thomas.
An ordinance to amend Article 2 and Appendix A, Alpharetta Downtown Code of the Unified Development Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to remove 126 North Main Street from the contributing historic property list, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on this item, now is your opportunity to do so. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council on that item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll offer a motion to approve PH-21-10 Unified Development Code text amendments, Historic Preservation Incentive Ordinance, and the ordinance is read by Mr. Sam Thomas.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilwoman Richard and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion to approve PH-21-10 Unified Development Code Text Amendment, Historic Preservation Incentive Zoning as read by City Attorney Sam Thomas, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So that wraps up old business for this evening, and we move on to the new business items. First business item up is City of Alpharetta Pay Plan Update. Ms. Randall, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This next item for your consideration and approval is the update of the city's pay plan. Pay plans and compensation plans, they rarely remain static. And last year when we discussed the comprehensive pay study, you wisely recommended the staff to continue to look at our compensation plan and our pay plan and annually evaluate its appropriateness so we can continue to remain competitive. The pay plan that we are recommending takes in consideration several factors. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, also known as inflation rate for 2020, which is 1.4%. Our current challenges recruiting talented individuals due to the scarcity of the applicant pool. It is a retention strategy as we are competing for the same talented individuals as other surrounding municipalities. And here in Alfreda, we do have top-notch employees, and the word got out, and a lot of municipalities are aggressively recruiting our current employees. And the pay plan also consider our compensation philosophy, which is to be at the 50th percentile and to remain competitive with surrounding municipalities in our comparables. So based on those factors, we are recommending the update to all range minimums by the CPI for 1.4% to keep up with the inflation. This will help us with recruitment. And we are also recommending the update of the range maximums, not only by the 1.4% CPI, but also to adjust the pay range spreads to reflect the current conditions and to better align with our comparables. And this effort will help us increase retention efforts. There is no significant fiscal impact to the pay plan because we are not adjusting any employee's pay unless if their current pay would fall below the minimums, which I believe is just 1 or 2 cases. Other than that, what it helps is current employees will have the opportunity for higher earnings as they stay with the city and they provide the commitment and the loyalty. If they don't stay with the city on the long run, they will not have the benefit of the higher maximum. For all of those reasons, we are asking your approval of the new pay plan effective June 26, which is the first day of the pay period of the first paycheck on the new fiscal year. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions from council on this item? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
We appreciate your efforts on keeping us up to date. I know we are having a lot of challenges retaining people from some of our local neighbors. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on the pay compensation plan, now is your chance. Seeing no one, will close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. I move that we approve the recommended pay plan effective June 26, 2021.
I have a motion by Councilman Binder, second by Councilwoman Richard, and that was to approve the pay plan update. Any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I do have one comment to make concerning this. I know folks are always concerned when we raise our salaries, but I explained to someone who was having they were having to wait a little longer time to get a pool permit and other permits. And our staff is inundated by those things right now. And I simply explained, a neighboring city has twice the amount of employees that Alpharetta has. We do twice the amount of work. Our employees labor intensively. We hire the best and the brightest, and we want to keep them here in Alpharetta. And so this is just another mechanism to do that. I'm proud of our employees. I'm proud of all they do, and we want to keep the best and the brightest in the city, and so that's why this is necessary. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? And I'll just expound on that a little bit. While many of our neighbors have more employees within the community development department than we do, one of our other neighbors had been contracting it out to a private sector organization to do that function for them, and they realized that we were doing it far better and far more efficiently, and so they are now bringing it in-house and trying to hire some of our talented employees. So it is a competitive market out there, and anybody who's looking at labor reports can see that it's a lot tougher lately, unfortunately, when it comes to the economics. That being said, all those in favor of the motion to approve the City of Alpharetta pay plan update, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So we'll move on to item B under new business, and that is the discussion and public input on Parks Bond referendum. Mr. Regas, you have.
Yes, Mayor and Council, and tonight is the second opportunity for the public to speak on the proposed park bonds. We have the list in front of you. Some numbers have changed from when you saw this May 24th. I can go over that if you would like, with any changes that were made.
Please do.
Okay, sure. Number one, Wills Park equestrian renovation build-out. That number stays the same at $5 million. Number two, Turf Webbridge large soccer field. That number stays the same at $1 million. Wills Park master plan projects. That number increased from $4 million to $6 million. Union Hill Park redevelopment trailhead.
If I could just pause you there, Bob. Yes, the item that's portrayed in front of us doesn't say $6 million. Yeah, 7.35 is the number in the graphic that we're provided here.
Director Rogers gave an updated list.
There should be a list in your packet.
Yep.
I apologize for.
That's fine. I was just looking here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this column is what was presented with the estimated project cost at the last council meeting, which came up to $35 million. The direction was to update those costs based on estimates, yet there was no direction to come back with a $35 million bond issue. So we're staying with 29.5.
That's fine. Once again,
yeah.
I noticed the disconnect between what you were saying and the graphic that I was looking at. I assume some of the public may have thought the same thing.
Thank you. Yeah. So number four, the Union Hill Park redevelopment trailhead. That number increased from $2 million to $3,250,000. Mid-Broadwell Park build-out, that number stayed the same at $500,000. Old Rucker Park design and build-out, that number increased from $2 million to $3 million. Farmhouse Park design and build-out, that number stayed the same at $2 million. Waters Road Park design and build-out, that number stayed the same at $2 million. The Alpha Loop, and I have to put a little asterisk here, the Alpha Loop and Parkland acquisition was combined the last time at $6 million. So now you see the Alpha Loop at $4 million. Mayfield Road Park, the 50% match, that went from $1 million to $0. Brookside Park Phase 1, that number stayed at $2 million. Milton Avenue design and build out, that number decreased from $2 million to $750,000. And Parkland acquisition was reduced to $0. And it balances at $29,500,000.
Thank you, sir. Any comments or questions? Councilman Hines.
I know we had discussion amongst council, even from the dais, about, and I think Councilman Burnett may have initiated this, about separating Alpha Loop from Parkland acquisition and how that may have affected our respective priorities. So I don't know if this list reflects the final priority list of council in light of that significant change or not. I just throw it out for a point of discussion. And just to put a finer point on it, I think there are some persons who may have ranked Alpha Loop by itself much higher relative to other projects, but with the inclusion of just a general park acquisition component, I think it suffered a little bit in the rankings, but I can't speak for anybody. That's just my understanding.
Councilman Merkel?
I fall in that category, and I'm Parks Liaison. But I felt that continued acquisitions at $6 million was a low priority for me. It might have been my last, because of the exact situation we're in here with 11 parks that have been purchased and not funded. So I felt like $6 million for funding, not realizing that the loop was in there. My loop number would certainly climb the ladder if we were given a position to make adjustments. So yes, it does affect what I said.
Councilman Burnett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to echo the sentiment, if there's a member of the council that doesn't think that it would be a top 5 initiative, with your permission, I would solicit feedback, because I feel like it's incredibly high, and I also recognize that you're getting to a place where time is of the essence, and we're not going to pass around another Excel document. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'll just say, actually, I'm a little disappointed to see the land acquisition go, because one of the points I made early in this process was there was no investment in the North Point corridor. And that was one area that I was hoping we were going to invest in, acquiring green space, because that's supposed to be an eco district, and we own very little green space in the North Point corridor, except for the Greenway, which is already there. So I was hopeful that we would have it, but it wouldn't necessarily change where I voted for the loop. I'd have to go back and see where I prioritized it. It doesn't move any higher for me. I think they were both high priorities for me personally. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Regas. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
Yes, sir. Nate Shack Lewis Jr., 12762 Waterside Drive.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Nat Lewis Jr.
Sorry.
It's okay. That's why everybody calls me Shack, because little Nat just didn't work. I live at 12762 Waterside Drive in Milton. My parents still live where I grew up on Canton Street. I'd love to make an argument for including farmhouse as a priority in this parks bond. From my perspective, it's a miracle or an act of providence that the remnants of farmhouse are even still available for us to talk about. If 400 had been built and veered off a little bit further east, it would have been covered up immediately with concrete and steel. If it were valuable in terms of real estate, somebody would have figured out a way to cover it up again. So for it even to be there is a miracle. And so now we have a very rare opportunity to make this area of Alfreda even more walkable, and that I know that's something we all want. As well as save a unique part of our history. Wouldn't it be great to extend the Big Creek Greenway to connect with Avalon and the medical offices to the east of 400 and other businesses with an attraction like an outdoor museum that farmhouse could easily become? The alternative is letting it deteriorate like some of the old historical homes in the area have done, to continue for it to only function as drainage and to become a place to collect trash and just whatever runs downstream. Is that what we want for such a unique and magical and sacred place in our town? I tried to walk down there today, and I knew if I tried too hard, I'd be breaking the law, because I'd be trespassing on private property or jumping a do not enter fence. So I decided not to try to refresh my memory today. But I was thinking that our ancestors would probably appreciate us remembering them and honoring them by taking care of the legacies and listening to the lessons that they have left for us. This is the opportunity we must seize, in my mind, in order to save the only and last remnants of our beginnings here. Farmhouse has been waiting for well over a century in almost secret, quietly waiting for us to find her and bring her back to life. Please don't let her down. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cobb?
Todd Stratton, 315 Rose Circle.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I've spent the last couple of weeks researching this topic in detail. I've spoken with 3 of you on the phone and 2 of you via email, and I want to thank you guys for taking the time to share your thoughts and perspectives with me. I've also spoken with a couple Alfreda business owners on this topic, and I've spoken to a friend of mine who's on a fellow city council in Metro Atlanta. So I feel like I've done my homework. For background, I fully support the Parks bond. I'm on the Alpha Loop every single day. I was on it today. And I like the items on the Parks list. And I understand, I think most importantly, how Parks investments are a component of our city's strategic direction as a way to balance the development that's undertaken over the last several years. I also like the negligible property tax impact of the bond. And I've already indicated a willingness to be on the bond committee that informs the public about the benefits of the proposed Parks bond. The only thing that I am concerned about is timing, because the timing of the Parks bond can impact the taxpayers of Alpharetta. So I have one question for you, and I know you guys don't answer questions, but maybe you will in further discussion. Why must the Parks bond be voted on in November when the outcome of T-Splost is uncertain? What's the rush? Why can't it wait 6 months and be voted on in May? The reason I ask this question is based on all the data I have collected. It seems like the wise and fiscally responsible thing to do would be to see how T-Splost goes first. If it passes and funds the city's transportation needs with county sales tax, then great. Then the Parks bond could be voted on in May as a standalone item without any dependencies on our important transportation list priorities in T-Splost. And for me, I'm kind of a simple person. You know, you kind of look at data and analytics, right? T-Splost 1 barely passed 52-48 the last time. So a conservative person would say, you know what, that's a flip of a coin. It could very easily fail in November if it's put up for vote. And if it doesn't pass in November, and Alpharetta passes the Parks bond in November, I'm very concerned about the tax impact of the city alone having to fund our mission-critical transportation items and the Parks bond items as well. And based on everyone I've talked to, I do not think we can afford that without a significant major tax increase. I've heard some people say, people that I like and respect, that we should vote on the Parks bond in November to take advantage of low interest rates, to avoid higher building and materials costs, and to, quote, show the citizens of Alpharetta that the council can get something done. But with all due respect, I think all these points are debatable, and none of them really rise to the level of impact to taxpayers in Alpharetta than avoiding the risk associated with a major tax increase. It's not too often we can avoid risk. By pushing the Parks bond to May, you're avoiding risk for the taxpayers of Alpharetta. So once again, why must the Parks bond be voted on in November when the outcome of T-Splost is uncertain? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb?
Michael Buchanan, 135 Pebble Trail.
Good evening, everybody. I am here to speak for the people who once lived nearby in a community of farmers, grist mill and sawmill workers, women and children. That small settlement called Farmhouse dates back to the 1830s and 40s. This church-going community sat at the intersection of 2 dirt roads, each road former Native American trails and eastern bison paths before that. A dozen or so years after Farmhouse's beginning, the focal point of the commerce, the homes, and the church and family interactions moved up the hill to here, right here. Alpharetta is a descendant of Farmhouse. Just where was this community? It was down the hill on Old Milton Parkway, just a few yards east of 400. And amazingly, the site still exists. The creek that ran the grist mill and sawmill, the stone dam that generated the power to run them, sloping land where the dirt roads led to the post office and the general store and up the hill to homes and the church, and even the daffodils whose ancestors perhaps graced tables many, many years ago. It's all still there. You can stand near the creek and almost hear the horses and wagons, the discussion about crops, and the gossip about who might or might not get married next year. So far, the farmhouse site has remained hidden from progress and from view. Unlike the vast majority of cities who have only handed down stories and perhaps faded photographs from their beginning, Alpharetta knows exactly where it started. Together, we can create a legacy that very few cities can claim, a unique, interactive, educational, real connection to how and where our city began. Who has not visited a historic site and wondered, who else walked the same path, looked at the same sky and watched the same water rush by? Who stood where I stand now? We can ask those questions at Farmhouse. I imagine taking visitors and students to the site and telling them, this is where my city began, and show them around. And then take them up the hill to City Center and say, and now 200 years later, this is where we are today, and show them around. As a former teacher, I know the educational opportunities provided by the site are endless. Yet I only hope that what I can imagine doesn't remain just my imagination. We, and you especially, have a chance to do something special here, and I'm very much in favor of Farmhouse having a well-deserved encore. Alfreda has always been a place eager to honor its past, and now is the time to do the same for Farmhouse. I believe that if you really want to proclaim where you are going, then honoring where you came from is part of that same journey. If we lose Farmhouse, it would be an irreversible and sad chapter in the story of Alpharetta. I urge you to make Farmhouse a top priority. Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Cobb?
Pat Miller, 13040 King Road.
My name is Pat Miller, and I live at 13040 King Road in Milton. But I am the president of the Alpharetta and Old Milton County Historical Society, the outgoing president. I will not be president after this month. You'll shortly be hearing from the wonderful gentleman who will be replacing me, and he can bug you about stuff for a while. I feel like that Farmhouse is a very special place. Mike just told you the history of it. I'm going to tell you how I feel about it, which is that the descendants of many of the people who lived in Farmhouse built this community. We still have many Teasleys and Trammels in the area, and out of respect for them and their legacy, I would love to see Farmhouse be preserved. But more than that, I think the current leaders of the city have done a wonderful thing in creating the trail system, and I feel like Farmhouse could be an incredible enhancement to that trail system. I'm in the area of Farmhouse quite a bit. It's very congested, it's noisy. Farmhouse could be not only an educational place, it could be a place of quiet contemplation, which I think the area could very much use. So I urge you to fund Farmhouse. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cobb?
That was the last one, sir.
But if there's anyone else here that would like to come forward and speak, please do so.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name's John Norton, and I live at 155 Shady Grove Lane. Sometimes. I'm in the process of building a new house. But anyway, I just moved back to Alpharetta last August. When I lived here from 1984 to 2000, I coached baseball at Wills Park. I had 3 sons, and I coached them from T-ball all the way through. Wills Park was nothing but dirt fields, basically, with some crabgrass in the outfield. When I moved back here last August, I walked over to Wills Park. I was dumbfounded what the city of Alfreda has done. I went to North Park, 2 football fields turfed. We never saw anything like that back then. When I moved back in August, I was approached and I was asked if I would like to serve on the Alpharetta Rec Board, which I couldn't believe it was like monkeys falling out of trees for me type thing. I was always somebody there for me. I wanted to do something for them. And what I understand now is that we're kind of gambling on T-Splosh passing for us to be able to do what's been proposed for the Parks and Rec Commission. Alpharetta does a tremendous job with their parks. I want that to continue, and I don't feel like we should gamble that on T-Splosh. I think it should be moved back those 5 months, and let's not take the chance. I just don't, anything that's voted on in Fulton County, to me, is a crapshoot. You just never know how it's going to come out. So, didn't say it as well as this gentleman over here, but I do think that we should move this back 5 months, vote on it later. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. If there's anyone else that would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your chance. Seeing no one, we will close public comment. There is no business item on that, or it won't be voted on this evening, so there'll be no vote on that matter. Next item up will be the consideration of the proposed T-Splosh 2 projects. Mr. Regas?
Just the next steps with the bond issue.
Okay.
Mayor, Sam has prepared the bond ordinance, and it'll be on your agenda for the first reading on June 21st, the second reading on June 28th.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Binder.
I just, I wanted to get a chance to hear what everyone had to say, and I definitely understand the passion on both sides. I mean, I'm unabashedly unapologetic for parks, and so if anybody knows me, that's what I'd like to see, and I would have gotten it done when we started talking about the projects in 2019. I understand the area of, just trying to wait and see as a strategy that's been continued since 2019. But I do think it's time for us to move. So I would hope that we can kind of figure out today what we want the bond to look like, and if we want the bond to go forward. But in May, when I first joined council in May 2016, just less than a year in, we voted on 3 items. And it's 3 items that our community loves and holds dear. It's transportation, it's education, and it's parks. And for different people, it's in different order, but they all voted for those things. So I have no issue, and I think we should all 7 talk about what we want to do, but I have no issue bringing that forward in November. But I do understand the hedging of risk and having that. So I think we could work with what ifs of, T-Splosh pass or fails and what bond would look like. And for me, I think we go with the top 7 projects. James, if you can put that up there, or whoever had that up, the top 7 projects had a majority support from council for all 7 of those. And so that's just under 21 million. But in there's a special little hybrid that came in after our May 2016 vote that Mayor Belle brought in, was the loop. And so I do think that's important. I think every council member would have it in the top 5. And just to have it, 4 is good, but I have no problem bringing that number to 8 million to make sure that that's part of the T-Splosh issue. So if T-Splosh pass or fail, we still have 8 million to take care of the loop. Now, what about other things on T-Splosh? Big things I've heard about was North Point, and other things were pedestrian safety. We can walk and chew gum. We can handle issues as they come in there. I do think the residents will see the benefits of T-Splosh and vote, but you're right, it could be a crapshoot. With North Point, we still have the TAD that we can work with, and that's kind of why I didn't have land allocation there, because I wanted land allocation North Point. That still could be done with the TAD, which still could be viable once we hit the restart switch in December if the council chooses to do so. So we do have a means to do that. And then within the $1.5 million on the pedestrian safety that was brought up, we could easily do that within the 5-year timeline of a T-Splosh if it were not to pass, do that within our budget period, that $1.5 million. So I do feel that we can fund things, the transportation projects, if T-SPLOST were not to pass. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean a tax cut. We just got to work together. Now, it was the concern on saying, let's wait. When it was brought up a week or two ago, I said, great, let's risk analysis it out, do the decision tree, and see what that would look like. But in condition for me to be supported that, I would need to know what a bond would look like if T-SPLOST were to pass and if T-SPLOST were to fail. I have not seen what that is, and that's why I don't want to wait till May, because I do not want to kick the can to after this year to say, let's now talk about what a bond would look like given any situation. We have enough understanding now of what the projects are that we can answer that question. And so I can't be supportive of waiting till May, because I put my hand out and said this is what I would be supportive of either way, but I haven't heard from everybody else. But what I can do is try to alleviate the concerns. And the top concerns on T-SPLOST were North Point, pedestrian safety, and the loop. So we can do it by adding the bond with the top 7 projects, and I'd be fine with adding $8 million for the loop, and then us being able to fund pedestrian safety throughout the years with our current budget, which can be done, and then continuing to move forward with the TAD and hitting the restart switch there, and then moving to North Point. But I'm all here, guys. I am who I am, and I'll be always championing it. But I want to hear from the 7 of you, and then get forward to what we want to do, and bring something to staff to say, bring this forward to us in the next meeting. So that's.
Councilman Hipes.
Well, there have been good discussions behind the scene, and I've certainly made haven't hidden the issue of, I think it's prudent and fiscally responsible for us to wait and to deal with our knowns as opposed to our unknowns, and let T-SPLOST be voted upon in November 1st. As stated, it passed 52-48 last time. And you could just as easily, in an off-year election, have a component of no continuation of the 3/4 penny sales tax, coupled by conservative tax voters, coupled with progressive tax voters saying, I'm not going to support that T-SPLOST because it doesn't include mass transit, and I don't support more paving and carbon fuels. Well, 52-48 could get flipped the other direction in a heartbeat. And especially whoever puts out their publicity campaign to pass it or to defeat it. And if it fails and we spend all of this money now or use up our available bonding capacity, I do not think that we will be making a prudent decision. I would not be making a prudent decision on behalf of the voters and the residents of Alpharetta. My fellow council member, who has been working very hard to find common ground, as have I, said that he hasn't heard anybody's list, but I gave him my list of what a list would look like if T-SPLOST failed, and he wrote it down on a whiteboard. He's received my list. He wrote it down on a whiteboard. And on my list is in fact the North Point project, and I do want to hear from Director Cook in a minute about North Point. And at the top of the list is North Point, and I have Alpha Loop high up on the list as well. And those are economic drivers for this city. They attract development. Right now, the T-SPLOST list has $12 million on it for the bond. Excuse me, for the Alpha Loop, I misspoke. And that doubles as a linear park as well. So every member of council up here may have a different idea about what a best of bond list looks like if T-SPLOST fails. If T-SPLOST fails, we have $30 million worth of bonding capacity unless we raise your taxes. We have a list on T-SPLOST and for the bond referendum items, that totals $103 million. You'll figure out real quick that you can't have everything. If T-SPLOST passes, then we move the parks. I would vote to move the parks list right here to the May ballot. I've given my commitment to my fellow council members that I won't debate it unless they want to debate the list. I'm giving my commitment that I would move that forward if T-SPLOST passes. But if T-SPLOST fails, I see some people passionate about Farmhouse out here. I know people who are going to be passionate about Brookside Park. I know people are going to be passionate about getting Webb Bridge turfed. Everybody's going to have their own particular passion. But my job, as I see it, is to make decisions that I believe to be best for Alpharetta as a whole. And I'm all in on North Point. I'm not resting on whether or not a TAD will be approved, whether or not Fulton County will go along with it, whether or not the school system will go along with it, how long that will take to raise the money. Right now, I am focused on getting some things done and eliminating variables. So, I did, in fact, write an article, and I wanted to appeal to the voters of Alpharetta, the residents, to consider the prudence of deferring this Parks bond referendum until May, to deferring until we know what happens with T-SPLOST. I said, hoping that T-SPLOST passes is not a strategy for our fiscal decision-making, but patience is a virtue. So a council member has asked to hear, from how we feel about things and what we think, and I feel very strongly that hope is not a strategy and patience is a virtue, and we will put together the best bond referendum for May of 2022. If T-SPLOST passes, it'll be a Parks bond referendum, and if it doesn't, it will be the best of both lists for what we can afford as a city without raising your taxes, or if you want your taxes raised, we'll be held accountable for it and we can talk about it. And we can have a bigger bond list. But I just have communicated this to the public and to my fellow council members, and I have laid my cards on the table.
Councilman Binder, I believe you had a clarification.
Just a point of clarification. I apologize. I don't want you to think I didn't hear. That's why I heard what you said. I had the list. You had three things: the Alpha Loop, the North Point, and the pedestrian safety. But my clarification is, what would the parks portion of the bond look like in May? Because that was my concern. What would get tipped off by this group of 7 if we wait till May? And that's not what I've heard, and I still haven't heard it today, of what the parks list that we see on that bond referendum items for parks would remain by May by this collective group, because we have all the information we need. So that's what I was speaking to.
Councilman Merkel?
Well, just quickly.
Clarification of the clarification.
And if it spurs further discussion to arrive at a goal, then so be it. But I have explained that my position with respect to, my best of bond list after November adds up to about $20 million off the T-SPLOST list. I believe those are vitally important to the city. That leaves approximately $10 million from the parks list. This is me speaking, nobody else. I explained to my fellow council member, we had a long and a productive discussion. And I said I would be willing to go with what the council has decided as are the top projects from all of our voting using this list. And, like number 1 is the Wills Park Equestrian for $5 million. Number 2, and you don't go very far before you get into $10 million off the parks bond referendum list when you've committed 20 on my list to transportation. I also said, in trying to explain how I would approach this, that, you know, if there's some uncertainty about the 50% match from the equestrian group for the Wills Park Equestrian, and if it were the will of council, you know, it would be my opinion that we could look at items 2, 3, and 4 on this list. I mean, this is where council has arrived at numbers through a blended ranking of these. But I would have approximately $10 million available for discussion before arriving at a final list. I have laid all of this out. So, you know, and under the way I see it, if there's always a chance also the parks bond could fail when it competes with the T-Splost as well. So, I mean, all of these things, we don't know what the answers will be until November, and we can certainly make an informed decision with voter input, just like you all coming up to the podium. And as a council and as residents, we can put forward the best list possible with what we can afford.
Now, Councilman Merkel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This didn't get planned to fall into the formation that it is. It was planned to work on putting together, we've been doing this for a long time, a list of priority improvements or acquisitions of parks. As liaison to parks, I firmly believe in it. We went through a process. The process was, if you had $30 million, how would you spend that when it comes to parks? We went through the process. People ranked them. We can argue about rankings, but you own them. Whatever you put down, you own it as your rankings, and we'll move forward. One change that I think is really more significant is the park acquisition goes from $6 million and gets reclassified as $4 million and called the Alpha Loop. I think if I would have thought that through well enough at the time, it would have moved up for me. If we were talking about a reduction of this list in fear of T-Splost passing, I'm not prepared to just say the top 6 or the top 7 or the top 5, because that wasn't the process we were given. If I'm told now, okay, you only have 10 million or 20 million, now what is your priorities? They become different. So I personally would push, and it doesn't have to take weeks. We've done this fairly quickly in the past. But if there is a discussion about reducing this bond size, I would request a reclassification, and it just takes an email. Bob can get it done in a day or two. If people read their emails, they'll get it and get it back. And then work with that number. But tell me what that number is that it's going to be reduced to, and then I'll come back to you with my priorities here. I want all 29.5 million. I don't want to sacrifice. I really am afraid, and again, farmhouse, I hear you people. I'm fine with that. We can definitely do it if we can get into this $30 million list, which I think our best chance of getting that's in May. If you were to put it on there in November and it's skinnied down, some people may look at the list and say, look, that's not the list I'm looking for. My neighbors may start asking questions like, hey, well, tell me about these projects, because I don't see my project on there. I don't see much on the east side that affects the corridors. So I want all $29.5 million bucks, including the farmhouse. And it is my business experience that tells me the best and safest way to do that is to leave this bond list, which we were asked to put together, intact. And I'm sure we can do something to vote on whatever we need to do to approve it for May, and get it all. I want all of it, and I think we can do it. And I think we can pass T-Splost. You got to remember, there's a third one on there. You got education. E-Splost is on there too. So you can start talking about voter fatigue. People start looking at one after the other, and I don't know if they put them on there in alphabetical order or what, but you know, some people may get tired by that point and going, oh, you want taxes here, and that's 3 taxes on one ballot. And then I have yet to truly grasp the funding. If T-Splost fails and this full 30 million passes, I don't see, and nobody should be able to show me how we pay for it without increasing taxes. And that's not a scare tactic. The first round of taxes would go to the business community from what I am hearing. So y'all be somewhat safe, although I'm sure the cost of goods and services will go up to cover what the businesses have to absorb. But I've just been through this thing so many times in the last 6 weeks. It just keeps coming back as the smart, safest, simplest thing to do is focus on getting T-SPLOST passed in November, and we can go out and cheerlead and root for it, and then have a bond committee, as the gentleman that came up and spoke earlier, put together to work throughout the holidays and into the spring. 5 months. If you give me 5 months, I'm confident the odds go up because I can't predict what's going to happen in November. We could lose them all, which is one option. So I'm taking it back to just being very simple. Let's get T-SPLOST done in November. Let's come back and get all $29.5 million in May, which includes the farmhouse. Thank you.
Any other comments from council? Councilman Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate all the comments from the public. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening. This is it's a very complicated process and discussions that we've been having for almost a year and a half now. I'd like to say, from a T-SPLOST perspective, I have a much different read on it than I think I'm hearing from some of the folks here. When T-SPLOST was voted on in 2016, the voters that voted for T-SPLOST didn't have any proof, there wasn't any tangible proof that the municipalities would be able to manage those funds and deliver the projects that were committed to on the T-SPLOST list. They voted, it was a leap of faith when they voted yes. I was one of those voters that voted yes. In our city, fast forward 5 years later, there are multiple projects that have been delivered from our T-SPLOST bill. There are multiple projects that are still under construction. It is not a leap of faith. We have those projects, and our residents are experiencing the benefits of those operational improvements and transportation improvements today. They're experiencing it now within that 5-year time frame. So I'm a firm believer that T-SPLOST coming forward in November, T-SPLOST 2, will pass by a wide margin because not only our residents have seen the benefit of it, but the residents in the surrounding communities have seen it as well. So I hear the concerns, but I am a firm believer that it is not going to be a tight vote this time. I believe it'll be a much stronger vote, and that will give us the ability to do those transportation projects. And I do believe that the projects that we've identified are projects that a 6-month delay, I do not see the value of a 6-month delay. We talk about economic drivers, the equestrian park. That's a $5 million bond project that has the opportunity to create a $10 million improvement in the Wills Park Equestrian Park. There's a $5 million match coming from the foundation. The equestrian park is a significant economic driver for our city. Every time there's horse shows, those attendees, those spectators, they're staying in our hotel rooms, they're eating in our restaurants, they're spending money in our local shops. It's a significant driver. I think that, to me, that's one of the most important bond projects, and it was tied for #1 here. So I think the timing is necessary, and I think the timing is in the fall, and I believe that our residents would be very supportive of those projects. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I would concur with Councilmember Richard's comments. T-SPLOST looked a lot differently then. I've always trusted the voters to do the right thing. Alpharetta voters, 70% of them have a college degree. 30% have an advanced degree, over 30%. They know the difference. They know when something's being pulled over their eye. And they also know when people are just waiting. We've been waiting since 2019, folks. I just want to put it on the line. And I can guarantee you, if this parks bond goes down to $20 million, farmhouse is left off. The #1 preservation project in our history of our city, farmhouse, the #1 has already been spoken out against by 3 council members here. So don't believe everything you hear here tonight just because you're present. I just want to make that real clear. If we wait on some of these folks to get something done, your average preschooler will be in high school before these parks come online as we pay as we go. That's the truth. Another thing that's truthful is we can get these parks done, and 70% of our residents can walk to a park within a 10-minute walk of their house. That's important. The 3 things that are important to people is transportation. I believe our voters are going to vote for these transportation issues because most of them have to do with public safety and pedestrian safety. They have to do with advancing that. Everybody wants that. They also, another reason I think T-SPLOST is going to pass this time, South Fulton, if they don't pass it, most of those cities have no money to spend on transportation if they don't pass the T-SPLOST. And also, I just believe it's the right thing to do for our citizens because citizens are moving here because they want quality of life, they want parks, they want the Alpha Loop, they want things that they can value as a community, and it helps to build our community. And when you look at our transportation in Alpharetta, drive around, drive to any city around us, our roads and our streets are better than any of them. That's not saying we don't need to constantly spend money on it, but we do. We just increased our milling and resurfacing by $100,000. It got increased last year even. We're spending the money on transportation, so don't listen to the naysayers and that we're not doing that. We already spend a large amount on transportation, and we'll continue to do that because it's a value to our voting public. Just as much as our parks are. So I hope you'll support the parks bond. Thank you, Farmhouse folks, for showing up, and please continue to do that. Your being here makes a difference. Thank you.
Councilman Burnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember sitting in an interview with Councilmember Hypes and Merkel a week or 2 ago, and told the gentleman who's running an executive search for us, is like, hey, we've got rich people problems. And what I mean when I say that is like, do you bond with AAA credit rating now, or do you wait 5 months? There can't be very many municipalities in the country that can sit here and have that argument. So regardless of where it goes or where it shakes out, the city is in great position to move forward. I love T-SPLOST. Last year, the mayor and the pro tem and I went down to GDOT. If we didn't have T-SPLOST, we wouldn't have come back with 3 bridges and $25 million for Old Milton Parkway that cost our residents less than 10 to do the entire thing. And Alpharetta, if it's based on nighttime population, gets a disproportionately bad deal. Nobody in the entire Fulton County can sell better results with T-SPLOST than the people in Alpharetta. None of the 7 of us will sit here and disagree with that statement. What we have been able to do with that funding source is remarkable, and every other municipality is jealous. As I shift gears to the parks, when you look at the 2040 Horizon Plan, the #1 thing that the residents in Alpharetta cared about were trails and parks. It wasn't transportation, although I do think it is of the utmost importance. I lean towards the theology of Councilmember Richard to think that residents have tangible results. But the strain on our roads today is 70% of what it was 2 years ago, just from a traffic standpoint. I think some of the pain is gone because of COVID, and I look forward to the day where I sit in traffic again, because that'll mean the economy is truly back to normal and the office space market is blowing and going. I am in favor of this because that's what the residents tell us that they want. But the ultimate thing that really drives me to putting a parks bond on the ballot is it's not my decision, and it's not their decision. It belongs to you. And if you don't want parks in November and you want to wait until May, then tell us. I don't take it personally. I think if the list is the same in May as it is in November, that's fine. Will the city pay a little bit more money for it? Maybe, maybe not. Nobody knows. It's anybody's guess. But I do believe that putting one foot in front of the other and having a funding source to do things like the Alpha Loop is critical. And to be able to take those projects as Kathy and her staff get easements and land to build the loop, you have to have three ways to pay for everything. And one of them is pay as you go, but the loop needs a funding source. And if T-Splost fails, then it has to come back in a parks bond. My ultimate hope is that they both pass and that there's $16 million, and you guys are sitting here, 10 years from now being like, look at what we did together. And I think that this community really, truly has the ability to sell results. It always has. Is that for me? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Burnett. So there's not really anything new that I can say at this point, because I've shared all of my concerns and all of my input in the bond list and all this stuff over the last 6 months. But sometimes it's important to put it all in perspective and to put it all in together so that you and my fellow council members hear it as one piece. Because it has been a 6-month process and going back to 2019. So let me just kind of share from my perspective. And granted, it is a little different being mayor. I have one vote just like everybody else on this dais. But I'm also the person everybody in the city holds accountable for it. And it just is different. And it makes me more risk averse. I'm not gambling with my money. I don't mind taking risks in my personal business life or in my private life and investments and things like that. So hope to me is less of a strategy, and I get that. I know there's people on this council that are very passionate about doing this in November and believe that there's a really good chance it's going to pass. Maybe so. As mayor, my worst case scenario is to wake up after the November election and find out that T-Splost didn't pass and the bond did. And so that's a concern that I just can't see me getting past. Doesn't mean we can't do it. Doesn't mean it won't pass without my support. I'm just telling you, we've had a lot of discussions, and within the past few weeks, there have been a lot of offline discussions trying to look for that common ground. Quite frankly, the only reason I haven't brought anything forward is because by the time I put down what I think I could live with and tried to share that compromise with other people, every one of them that I shared it with shot down one part or another of it. And I was like, well, there doesn't seem to be anything that's going to get us much closer. It sounds like we've got 4 votes. We might be able to pull 5, but I didn't see the common ground to move forward. I think it's healthy to have this discussion, and maybe we can find it. But I'll go back to some of the comments. One, talking about 2016. I was elected when City Center bond passed, okay? That bond issue and the bond issue that was presented to the voters in 2016, our city council had very intentionally retained bonding capacity. As tax revenues increased and debt levels decreased, they retained that bonding capacity for periods of years so that when, after 5 or 6 years, they could go to the voters and pass a bond issue with that capacity without taking it out of operations or capital, okay? That's not the position we're in right now. We're in a position where even prior to us not getting the $21 million and having to get $6 million from the federal government, most of y'all may not even know that. About 3 weeks ago, we found out that this budget had to be amended by $15 million because the federal government had told us for 3 months they were going to be sending us $21 million, and then they came back and said, whoops, sorry, we're going to cut you a check tomorrow for $6 million. So what we are in a position now is this 29.5 is not bonding capacity we have. This is bonding capacity that comes from capital projects. We would be funding this out of the milling and resurfacing, out of the repaving of roads, out of all those projects that need to be maintained, sidewalks, stormwater, things like that. And that's okay as long as our projections are good, because what it would take for us to be able to pay for milling and resurfacing and stormwater in 5 years is that our projections of increased revenues over that time frame will make us whole in 5 years, so then we won't be hurting when it comes time to do those things. Maybe it'll be good, maybe it won't. There's a point where I could accept that risk, but it is a risk. And so I'm looking at all of these different risks. I heard the discussion about, we've been waiting since 2019. We've got to move forward now. Well, if you recall, when we were having that discussion, we were talking about really maneuvering some tax cuts and increase and stuff. One of the reasons we don't have more bonding capacity now is in the past, we chose to do homestead exemption increases. So we gave you tax cuts over the past few years. That's why we have so little bonding capacity now. Those were decisions we consciously made. We'd have more money to do bond issue had we not given you those tax cuts, but we did. But in 2019, had we gone to you in 2019 in November then with a bond issue and then turned into COVID 4 months later, there's nobody that could have predicted that risk. But those risks exist. So I understand that some people are willing to assume those risks and accept those risks. But to pretend like they don't exist, to me, is not acceptable, because this isn't my money. If we lay people off, if we don't have enough to hire the officers in the police department when the stuff hits the fan, that's a problem. And so I feel those risks more sensitively, perhaps, than some of the other council members. When it comes to the items on the list and the amount on the list, months ago when we sat down, I looked at the first list and I had a couple of comments. I said, 2/3 of the money spent on the west side of town and nothing spent on the North Point corridor. Not much has changed. And having seen 2 successful bond issues, you have to be sensitive. I think Councilman Merkel talked about what's in it for me, what's in it for my neighborhood, what's in it for my area. My top priorities, I believe Councilman Hypes has said it, we right now have about 30 to 40% at best of the 20 million square feet of Class A office space that's filled. If we don't get people back into those buildings, our economy, our small businesses can't survive with that extra 60,000 people a day who used to come into Alpharetta a year and a half ago. The restaurants can't survive. You can see them closing, and primarily on the east side of town, because we've spent $100 million on the west side of town over the last few years. And that's awesome. It's been tremendous. But the neighborhoods over there are dependent on those office parks, and those office parks, as they were talking about with the CID, are relying upon amenities, on connectivity, on trails and things like that. And so it's not that I don't value any of the things on this list, but by gosh, if I've only got $19 million or $29 million, we need to get as much bang for that buck as we can. And if we don't get people back into those office buildings on the east side of town, it's not good for anybody. I don't care what neighborhood you're in. And it's not good for our economy, and it's not good for our quality of life. So I'm once again, get past all the risk and all this. On the face of it, I'm like, man, why aren't we spending in the areas that are at higher risk? I'm the only person on this council who's actually had a family member use the equestrian center for the last 10 years. I've spent hundreds, not thousands of hours picking hooves and brushing horses out there, and I love the equestrian center, and I know the economic impact that it has on this city. But when I see the amount we're crediting towards redoing Wills Park, it's a stretch. When you're talking about, okay, do we build Alpha Loop connections to the east side of town? Do we do something meaningful on the North Point corridor? That's a tough one, especially, and I've talked to the people in the Equestrian Foundation. I know them. I like them. Heck, we fought to keep the Equestrian Center alive 5 to 6 years ago. But we don't have any guarantees that they have that $5 million. I don't doubt that they can raise it. They certainly are confident they can raise it, but I've asked them for some kind of written guarantee or some kind of commitment. And so as a matching $5 million, it's a higher priority. But once again, if I'm going to the voters and saying we're getting $10 million of investment for $5 million, by God, I better be able to have some kind of commitment. Because if something goes wrong and they don't come up with that $5 million, people are going to ask me, I'm the mayor, what are you going to do? And I'm going to look around saying, I don't know. Where do I come up with that $5 million without further stealing it from stormwater and milling and resurfacing and things like that? I understand the passion in wanting to invest in our parks. There's not anything on here that shouldn't be done at some point in time. And I don't know how we resolve this to get 6 or 7 people on board for a November bond issue. That's the only reason I haven't put forward a proposition that I thought would get us there. If we can come up with one, God bless us. I know in the past we've been able to work very hard and come up with some compromises, but I'm just not there yet. And November's a real hard pill for me to swallow. I understand there's people that are confident about it. I'm just not, because $52 million is what's on that list, the projections for T-Splost. And I don't know where we, and I mean me, as the mayor, are going to come up with that money if T-Splost doesn't pass. So that's where I am. Councilman Hines.
Since T-Splost and Mr. Regas is up there on T-Splost, wanted to know if I could ask Director Cook a couple of questions about items on the T-Splost list.
I don't see why you couldn't ask.
If we moved on to the next agenda item. We already had moved back. Oh, okay.
I lost that battle a long time ago. Ms. Cook, do you mind coming forward?
James took us forward. Oh, you took us forward.
Director Cook, you've been listening to a lot of discussion about priorities relative to one list and another, and I've announced my priorities as being North Point and the Alpha Loop. Can you address or speak to the economic impact and development of $10 million on the T-Splost list for North Point Parkway? How would that all be applied and work in connection with private development, et cetera?
For North Point, of course, it's to reverse the negative economic impact because consumer choices, of course, have changed. But the funding for North Point is to look at making it more walkable, putting in the 12-foot sidewalks, which we should be able to award that contract in a couple of weeks for the actual design. But that's the goal, to make North Point more walkable and to kind of reverse the trends.
And in terms of that type of infrastructure at North Point, how does that interplay with future development and interest in development?
It definitely attracts the type of walkable development that you want to build there. So if you're putting in the framework, putting in public infrastructure, of course that could develop. Also, of course, if we have the design plans, the plans that we're working on the design, it may be that we're able to give some of that to development that's attracted. So, it's putting in the investments, but it also attracts additional development.
And as for the Alpha Loop, I've always advocated, I think one of the highest priorities for me personally is doing that segment south of the post office on Old Milton down to the Village Tavern, which would then make east-west connections, and then further on through North Winds and what used to be called 360 Tech Village. But what would be the economic impact and attraction to development and of $12 million for the Alpha Loop?
Well, with the Alpha Loop, it is, a park that's, that helps with the economic development of filling the office space. So, when people are competing for talent, of course, office buildings that have these amenities, it's something that's important to them. So it helps with the economic development of keeping the offices occupied, but it also is something, tourism, residents like that. So that's kind of a park that hits a multiple number of economic development opportunities.
And if we're able to build Alpha Loop in strategic locations closer to some of our hotels, does that have any impact on our hotel occupancies?
It could, of course. I believe that it would, because if you look at, the top 10 things to do in Greenville, I think Swamp Rabbit Trail is the top one, trails. As well as, of course, the Beltline is a huge draw. But we've always had high occupancy during the week when we had full office. But this is something, of course, if you have amenities that they could use on the weekends, you may increase weekend stay.
And as an example, and this involves parks and trails, like over at the mayor has referenced the east side of town. Are there areas around Brookside where this would be beneficial, trail systems coupled with parks to retain businesses over in some of the mid-rise office buildings over on the east side of town?
I don't know if I can answer that one yet, because we're in the middle of studying what that area is looking for. It's the actual businesses, the tenants, how much do they use the existing trails, and some of the improvements that we should make. Of course, we're also talking to the homeowners associations in that area. So we're in the early process of planning for some improvements to Brookside, so I can't really comment on that area.
Okay. Well, those are some of my interests on certain priorities, and so I appreciate it. Thanks.
Any other questions or input from council at this point? Well, thanks for the second bite at the apple. I think it was good to get all those comments and Mr. Regas, is there anything else?
No, Mayor, we'll come forward on the 21st with the $29,500,000 ordinance, unless
I threw out the top 7 projects, and then an understanding of the loop is an important one there for $8 million to get what we needed. But I'd be interested to hear what the other council members say on that, or if they want to continue with the 29.5. So that would be the first 7 projects, and then add $8 million for the loop.
You talking about a November ballot?
Sorry.
Are you talking about a November ballot?
Yes, sir.
I wouldn't support it. It's just me, but like I said, I can't get past that one.
Anybody else?
I could support that just as an insurance, just in case, so that we can have that extra 10 million and be safely conservative and throw some of those T-SPLOS projects in there.
Okay. Well, we'll continue to have offline conversations and see if we can find common ground, like I said.
Okay.
But please proceed on the calendar that you've projected, and
Sure.
It'll either move forward or it won't. Thank you, Bob. I do appreciate your time on that. Next item up is the consideration of proposed T-SPLOS 2 projects. Director Sesevitz, let's try again.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is the revised project list. If you recall the last conversation, last meeting we've had, there was one revision. It was adding the tunnel underneath Haynesbridge Road at Georgia 400. We basically pulled out $500,000 from the Hope Boulevard roundabout and placed it into the Haynesbridge Road Tunnel. So to keep our schedule with Fulton County and all the neighboring cities, we have to have a council approve our project list by the 15th of June, which is why we're meeting tonight on this item.
Any comments from Councilman Burnett?
I think we have, although there's been a lot of debate earlier tonight on a previous issue, I think that we have done an exceptional job crafting a list and checking it twice and all those good things, and I appreciate you, Pete. Thank you.
Mr. Regis?
Mayor, my only concern is I was looking at the T-Splosh list. It doesn't add up to 68,215. It adds to 74,12,590. So
I noticed that too.
yeah,
right.
so I
You
just
see, that's what you get for having Public Works try to do numbers.
What?
yeah.
Yeah. We will check the numbers. I'll get with.
I see our finance department's back there crunching numbers right quick.
And I think the latest number from the county is 68,215, right, Pete?
Yes.
So the bottom number is the correct target.
Yes.
So the 68,215. Director Harris, if you don't mind. Okay. He doesn't have that many toes.
Yeah. No. I'll.
First number
Oh.
55% of something and something
It's 85%.
of what was the number?
Last number I had was 61.
61,230,
Yes.
right? Okay. 61,230, and that's tier 1 and tier 2. And then the 9 million is 70 million. So I think just the 68 is just wrong number. Does that sound correct? Yeah. Well, I meant it's 70 million.
We'll take whatever number you bring.
So I don't think the list
Is incorrect.
is incorrect.
Did he just change the total to?
Is that correct? We're looking back at the county.
Okay.
We just want to make sure that the list is, I mean, the number can be wrong, the bottom line number, but the list is correct.
The
because
project list is the important.
So,
Absolutely. I just want to make sure,
Yeah.
once y'all feel comfortable that we're here and we won't have to make any adjustments to the list, then we can go ahead and move forward.
I just don't
I'm just trying to get the number.
The final number, that this, as it shows, would be 70,412,590.
Right.
My kids laugh when you turn these lights on here, but there you go. Alpharetta,
59.
that's the latest?
No, this is not the latest one. They changed the revised.
I
one.
think it's just the final number. That's,
I'll find the email from Mayor and Council. I'll find the email from the county.
Thank you, gentlemen. Not right now. I was just asked if we needed to vote on this, and this is not a business item that we'll be voting on this evening. Once again, we were just trying to work on the list, and good thing, because
We do need to vote on the list this evening, the specific project list.
Oh, okay. I did not see that motion there.
The county needs this by the end of June,
Right.
so that's their deadline.
Okay. So you're comfortable
Yes.
that if we vote, Sam, if we vote on this and we see that something needs to be changed,
Yeah, I mean, let's just go ahead and get the approval in place, and then if we see something, we can fix it.
just wanted to make sure we could still fix it.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That being said, I'll call for a motion.
Mayor Gilvin, I do have a couple public comment cards on this item.
Excellent, thank you.
Jeff Trunker, 13105 Windrush Lane.
My name is Jeff Trunser. I'm a representative of the HOA at the Orchards of Hopewell to talk about the roundabout at Hopewell and Vaughn Drive, which is a Tier 3 project. You don't have $1.5 million today to spend on anything like that, although it apparently was talked about over a number of years. Yesterday, I went and looked at this traffic on Hopewell coming into town. There is a traffic sign there that actually shows the speed limit or the speed that actually people are driving. They're coming in on Hopewell, and I just spent a half an hour, looked at 100 cars, 80 of them were speeding coming into town. There is no way to gauge what the traffic is going out of town, but just by observation, I would say it's faster as they leave town on Hopewell. I would suggest to you that somebody put in a camera system that issues speeding tickets, so you don't have to have an officer there, and you mail the people at Milton speeding tickets because those are the ones coming in and out of town. We're right on the edge. If you want to pay for a roundabout, have them pay for it. You know, it is a safety issue. Since I've lived there, I haven't seen any wrecks. But the traffic is going to increase dramatically as the Main Street construction project goes on and impacts the number of lanes coming past our neighborhood on Main Street on Highway 9. So just a simple comment, I think that for a few dollars, we could put something in there that would make it safer and keep the speeds down. The highest speed I saw yesterday, Sunday afternoon, was 51 in a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit. There's a lot of people go faster than that. I just happened to catch from 2:30 to 3. So I wish you would consider having somebody look at that and make the roads safer for us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Director Robinson, did you hear that? Thank you. Director of Public Safety's back there. And honestly, folks, anytime you have concerns about a specific zone with speeding, please call our police department, let them know. They do prioritize their traffic enforcement based on complaints and accidents. So we appreciate you sharing that. I'll tell you that we do not have the legal authority to put a speed camera there. The state allowed us to put them in school zones a couple of years ago, but there's no legislation that would allow us to use cameras for enforcement there. That's why we use them in the school zones, because at least we can enforce them there without having to have an officer sit there 24 hours a day, because we know there's areas that, and quite frankly, it breaks my heart knowing that area. A roundabout there is more just a $1.5 million speed bump, because the traffic flows aren't bad. Sometimes we use them to help improve the traffic flows. On Rucker Road, they've done a tremendous job taking out red lights and putting in roundabouts. But quite frankly, the whole reason for doing one there, and potentially at Mayfield and Canton, is to put a $1.5 million taxpayer-funded speed bump that will slow people down coming in and out of town there. So that's why it's on the list, and it's probably Tier 3, because that's a small enough bite at the apple that when we can accumulate some funds, we could pay that out of an annual budget if we could. So just fill you in on that part. Ms. Cobb, do we have any other public comment cards?
Yes, sir. Sandra Johnson, 4104 Windrush Lane.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm addressing you basically on the fact that 2 years ago, that roundabout was a condition of the developer that was putting in either 7 or 9 lots, which would enter and go straight across Vaughn. We talked about a light, and we were told at the time, this is on 9, where the intersection of Vaughn. We have had several serious accidents there, but not as many recently. That was shot down because we were told that DOT wouldn't approve it. The roundabout became an issue because cars are flying down there, as was mentioned by Jack. I don't know how you're going to be able to put 7 or 9 houses. The road is not clearly visible when you're coming south for these houses and any traffic that they have coming in and out. If we do not have a roundabout there, you are going to see major accidents because of the speed. The roundabout is a bump in the road, as you mentioned. It does slow down people. It gives a better appearance than just having, you don't have stop signs. You don't have anything to facilitate those people coming out of that subdivision. I've heard tonight that they're already sold, 7 houses. I don't know what has happened, but they have not been proceeding with their development there. But it's an issue. It's a small appropriation for a major safety issue for people coming from Milton and those of us that live along there. I asked you to reconsider it being the 3rd tier. I asked you to try to find some way to fund this roundabout or give us a light or something. And I know a light is not desirable there, but...
I've been here 10 years. That's the first time I've ever heard anybody ask for a red light. That's awesome.
Well, I'm saying it's not desirable, but something needs to be done. And we need to do it before those houses come online. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Pete, would we be able to put a 4-way stop there if we wanted to?
Most likely will not meet the warrant due to the minimal side volume of road coming from the side streets. That's my initial assessment. So there's not enough traffic on Vaughn and from that subdivision to warrant the vehicles to stop on Hopewell.
Okay. I was just curious. It's certainly not ideal, but at least it's something that would be more affordable in the short term until we can get around to the roundabout. If you don't mind, please check into the warrant and see, because there's more traffic going down Vaughn than there used to be.
Correct. Yeah. The last time we did the study, I knew I didn't meet it or the traffic signal warrant analysis, but we'll do another one. Not a problem.
Okay. I appreciate it.
And I do have the revised numbers. I was able to find the numbers that came from the county.
Okay.
So the 52,045 is correct, the 2 million for tier 1. Tier 2 numbers and the tier 3 numbers of 9,185,000 is correct as well. The grand total of 70,424,000 and change is what the bottom number should be, not the 68 million. So the 61 million is the total that we would receive for tier 1 and 2 projections.
So are we right with the final number, or do we need to amend that?
The 70 million we can amend.
Sam, do we need to reconsider?
Let's reconsider. Let's have a motion for reconsideration based on new information.
Can we have a motion for reconsideration of that item, please?
Certainly. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we reconsider the amount to be $70,424,000. And how many changed, Pete? I didn't. How much in change?
We still have comment cards.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, motion
Hold
for.
on, hold on. If I could.
Sure.
We have more public comment cards.
Okay.
So. No, that's my fault. I didn't realize we still have more public comment cards, but we need to do that before we go.
Janice Toluto, 2104 Windrush Lane.
Hello, I'm Janice Toluto, 2104 Windrush Lane. A few years ago, I stood right here relative to the zoning variance request made for the property, at Vaughn and Hopewell. I was with Sandra. And I addressed the traffic issue and the problems that the subdivision would be creating. And because there was one residence there, and now you were going to put 9. It was explained that plan for that site was a roundabout, and the developer was going to allow a large piece of his property to be used for the roundabout with a very small area from the yard that's on Andover, and then there would be the rest used with our property at the Orchards, which is at the corner of Hopewell and Vaughn. At that time, I even brought up that we have a retention pond right behind our trees, and that we may not be able to do that with some of our property. But after it was all explained, we were shown a drawing, and we agreed that the roundabout as planned would be the solution to the dangerous intersection. We've already heard about the speed. We've already heard about the volume. There is a hill there that also, I think, may obscure a stop sign unless there is some warning ahead of time. But anyway, I do ask you to very seriously consider keeping the roundabout as planned so that the developer can finish the entrance to his subdivision, and as well as keep the promise you made to allow him to have the zoning variance and for us to have the roundabout. And thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Cobb, do we have any more public comments?
Yes, sir. I have one more. Felix Zentz, 800 Hopewell Place Drive.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First off, I wanted to state that I'd been a resident beginning in 1996 in Alpharetta, and in 2011 on Canton Street, 381. And in 2011, I moved and bought a house in the Hopewell Place subdivision, just a half a mile north off of Hopewell, where the city limits of Alfreda and Milton combined. I'm also would like to address the issue on speeding. Since 96 till now, there's been a lot of increase on residential property in that area. And traffic has definitely increased in speed from the time I was a resident at 381 Canton until now, where my home is directly beside Hopewell Road a half mile down from the city limits. Since I moved into 2011, there has been 3 accidents right at the intersection of Hopewell Road and at Hopewell Place Drive, is where I live. 2 of them were from people speeding north out of Alpharetta, and 1 was from somebody speeding south into Alpharetta on Hopewell. There's been, during the time that I've been in Alfreda and Milton, I have placed calls and open incidents with Alpharetta Police, and also since 2011 with the Milton Police regarding the excessive speed. And this occurs in both directions that I have experienced living directly off of Canton Street and Hopewell Road. I don't know what needs to be done or what can be done, whether it's part of T-Splots or if it's a part of something else special outside of T-Spots. But, and I know that I'm not a resident of Alpharetta, but as a safety concern, something definitely needs to be done because the traffic seems to be increasing in speed as time goes on. And just a kind of an FYI, from the stoplight at Mayfield and Canton to the roundabout that is north on Hopewell, that's a 4.5 mile drive where there's no stop signs going north and south. And the speed is definitely excessive. I mean, I've seen it on the weekends. I've seen it late at night. I've seen the city of Milton.
Excuse me, sir. I don't mean to cut you off. We generally try to keep comments to about 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. But I think we get your point. So unless there's another point that you wanted to make.
No. Thank you very much for hearing.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Ms. Cobb, do we have any more public comment cards?
No, sir.
But if anyone else would like to come forward, now's your opportunity.
Full of comments tonight. Anyway, I just wanted to agree with everybody says. I live on Pebble Trail, and they really do just fly up and down through there. And in some parts, the sidewalk is very close to the street. So it's pretty nerve-wracking to walk up to the art center or whatever and have people buzzing by at 50 miles an hour. So a minute ago, you asked someone, would it be possible to put a 4-way stop sign at Vaughn and Hopewell? Could we move that up a bit and put one where Canton and Hopewell all split off and make a 3-way stop sign? At least that would slow them down as they're coming into Alfreda. They'd have to stop somewhat before they get down the street to the.
Where are you talking about?
Where Canton comes up and it makes that right and goes out to Highway 9, then it continues on to become Hopewell. So where the little short Canton Street comes in to meet Canton and Hopewell, if that makes sense. It's kind of this side of where Vaughn comes in, on right, kind of near where Andover is and all that.
Okay.
That little street right there would be a good spot for a 3-way stop. Because if you're coming into Canton, which a lot of people cut through to go through there, it gets pretty backed up. And then as people are flying up and down Canton, that then becomes Hopewell, then sometimes it's really hard to get out there.
No, I understand what you're talking about now. We'll certainly look into it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time and share your comments on the T-Splice list? Seeing no one, we will close public comment on the T-Splice list. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell, do we have a motion on that item?
We do. I have a first motion to consider the T-Splice 2. To reconsider.
Well, we never actually voted on it because we got to the public comment. So I was mistaken. That was my error. We had. public comments come up, and I lost my train of thought and forgot that we had not voted on the item because I was calling for a motion and then realized that we had public comments, and we never voted on that item. My error, but.
So,
Error's over here.
Okay, I'll throw Peter under the bus. No, it was my fault for thinking we needed to reconsider, but.
okay, I now have the total, so I can proceed.
Please do.
Okay. A motion to approve the T+2 project list as presented and identified as tiers 1, 2, and 3 projects with a cumulative total of $70 million, not to exceed $70,412,590.
One.
Have a motion. Did you have a comment before we do this?
Yeah. Remove the do not to exceed, because if more money comes in than the 70
I would like to make a friendly amendment.
Okay, I'll be glad to remove that. Let me do that. Motion to approve the T+2 project list as presented and identified as tiers 1, 2, and 3 projects with a cumulative total of $70,412,590.
So we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell and a second by Councilman Merkel to approve the T-SPOS list as defined by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell. All those in favor, please vote yes quickly. And it does pass unanimous.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Pete. We appreciate y'all getting it ironed out for us. So that wraps up the T-SPOS projects, and we'll move on to item D, which is the approval of fiscal year 2022 budget and millage rate levy. This is the first reading. Mr. Harris, you have the floor again.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, this is the first reading of the fiscal year 2022 budget ordinance, as well as the first reading, which will be another item, of the millage rate levy ordinance. And, that's correct. Made all my comments at the public hearing part. So.
Any question for Tom before we have the ordinance read? Sam? You're on.
Okay, yes, sir. The first one we're going to vote on is an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, adopting the final estimates of revenue and expenditures for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2021 and ending on June 30, 2022, as its annual budget, appropriating the use of funds shown therein as may be needed or deemed necessary to defray all expenditures and liabilities of the city for such fiscal year, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if there is anyone that would like to come forward and speak on the budget ordinance, now is your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. A motion to approve the ordinance as read by Sam Thomas.
I have a motion by Councilman Binder and a second by Councilwoman Richard, and that was to approve the budget ordinance as read by City Attorney Sam Thomas. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Tom, you have anything to say about the second ordinance?
Nope.
Okay. Sam, could you please read the second ordinance?
Yes, sir. An ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to fix the ad valorem tax rate of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia for the fiscal year commencing July 1, 2021 and ending June 30, 2022, and for other purposes.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comments on this ordinance?
We do not, sir.
But if anybody here would like to come forward and speak on this, now is your opportunity. Seeing no one, will close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. I move to approve the ordinance from City Attorney Sam Thomas to fix the ad valorem tax rate for the City of Alfreda.
Second. We have a motion by Councilman Binder and a second by Councilman Merkel, and that was to approve the millage rate ordinance as read by City Attorney Sam Thomas. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So that will wrap up the fiscal year 22 budget ordinances, and we'll move on to the design build pedestrian scramble at the intersection of Milton Avenue and Canton Street, Roswell Street. Director Sisevich, you once again have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. 49 is Public Works is requesting a award a design build contract for a scramble at the intersection at Roswell, Canton Street, Milton Avenue, in the amount of not to exceed $103,160 to Brooksbury Haney. We received 3 RFPs to move forward with this project. On May 11th, Brooksbury Haney was the overall #1 RFP scoring based off of previous work. They recently have designed a scramble at Milledgeville, in downtown Milledgeville, Georgia. So they use that experience, as well as Brooksbury Haney is also one of the on-call GDOT firms who does a lot of our signal timing through our RTOP program. So we're looking at a 150-day schedule for this design build. We would go through the design process, get the permit, and then move forward with construction.
Thanks, sir. Any questions from council? Councilman Merkel.
Pete, do we know what the impact of the school is going to be on that intersection when it opens?
Right now, no. And the reason why we say that is because the majority of the traffic is freshman, sophomore, from what I understand. So the volume where the pickups would occur.
It's a fair question, or fair answer. What about the hotel?
I do not know that either yet right now. I would say more that intersection probably can see more of the mid-block crosswalk that they're going to be installing as part of their project going across.
Right. Is this a budgeted item?
It is not currently in the public.
It's not in your budget. My question is, if we're cutting as much as we're cutting projects-wise and employees, is this really an emergency that needs to be done now? Would we not wait till maybe the midterm, get an idea of traffic, and then see if there's even money in the budget for it? I find it hard for $100,000 to come out of nowhere almost that's not allocated for a project at an intersection at this time. It's not that bad. I walk it all the time. And what you already see is people jaywalking to avoid, doing a two-way crossing. So if you put them stopped on all 4 corners for extended periods of time, I just see more jaywalking going on. But that's the part you can work out, and that's the part public safety can work out. My concern is that it's not a budgeted item. We're scraping dollars to get things done. We're talking about dropping projects, and then this $100,000 isn't really going to make a major change to a situation that doesn't really have a problem yet.
Understand.
I get it. You and I talked. It may be needed down the road, and I think it's kind of cool, actually, and if it works, I think it's a great possibility. I just don't understand how we can say, we got to cut this. Oh, yeah, but we'll throw $100,000 at redoing an intersection differently. And whether it's better or not is yet to be foreseen, although I do understand from Director Robinson that, yes, the fewer crossings, the fewer accidents, but I don't know how many accidents are even happening out there right now, where there's a list of pedestrians. Because like I said, I walk it all the time. It moves pretty slow. So my concern in this is the cost and where that money comes from versus where it should maybe go in the near future. Thanks.
Councilman Hines.
Director Pete, follow up to Councilman Merkel. Have you anticipated what effect traffic will be on Roswell and Canton Street while Highway 9 is being under construction?
No, sir.
Can you describe the car pedestrian sequence? You and I talked, and I was left a little unclear, but and I'll lay the framework, and then you straighten it out for me.
It has not been designed yet, so we have not determined what that sequence would be. A typical sequence is, east-west movement would go for the walk, your north-south movement would go for the walk. You would then have everything go for the walk, and then everything would stop. So it'd be every 4 light cycles, it would change. That can be tweaked, that can be modified, that could be determine what time of day you do this. It could be turning all on twice, keeping traffic stopped twice, all 4 intersections going at the same time twice in that 4 light cycles. So we haven't got to that point yet of figuring out what is the most effective signal timing for that intersection.
So, and again, we talked briefly, and I came away from it not real clear. We have north-south traffic, and we have east-west traffic. Is there a point in time when north-south and east-west traffic will be stopped all at the same time to allow a scramble cross?
Yes.
Is there a point in time where there'll be north-south traffic and pedestrians will continue to walk north-south on the crosswalk, or will they hold?
Most likely, they would move, but we're not at that point where we know what's the optimum way to do it. What might be the most, what we think is the most optimal way, timing plan-wise and modeling plan-wise, may not actually be that way.
So it may be the case that pedestrian traffic will continue to go north-south with the vehicles and east-west with the vehicles. And then vehicles will stop at some point in all four directions. So whoever hasn't crossed to the point where they want the opposite side, they can go across the middle.
Correct.
Okay. And hypothetically, when the lights change for all four directions, and let's say the north-south stop, east-west, and so there's the scramble. One lane, one direction of traffic will be the first to go next, correct? It'll be either east-west or north-south, right?
Yes.
And then after that, the opposite. So whoever's the last in that sequence of pedestrians only, north, south, east, west, they're going to basically wait an extra cycle. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Okay. And during that extra cycle, you don't know how far up Canton Street, north of Milton Avenue, you don't know how far that's going to back up.
No, and the reason why is because we haven't figured out what's that timing program going to be. Is it 5 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds for the movement, for the red, yellow, green? We haven't engineered that out yet.
But they'll be waiting what amounts to an extra cycle because there will be a pedestrian group filling that one cycle.
More likely, yes.
So whatever the normal wait time is now with the backup of traffic, whoever's the last in that cycle might be waiting longer, and the backup may be more pronounced than what it currently is.
It could be.
Right. And that could go all the way back to where those townhomes are near Lily Garden Way, and they're having a tough time getting out of there. Or it could be in front of the valet parking at the new hotel.
Could
possibly.
Be. Possibly.
So, how and when will you just make the cycle based on what you see, or are you going to have a plan in advance?
We have traffic counts that we can pull, and then we will do the modeling and figure out what is the best cycle to go forward with to have the least impact of vehicles as well as the greatest safety concern for the pedestrians.
If the pedestrians can't go with the north-south traffic and have to wait for the scramble, do you anticipate that they'll jaywalk and just cut mid-block?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
They do it now.
But if they had to wait 3 cycles in order to cross, I mean, are we not actually enhancing safety, or are we encouraging people to say, I'm not going to wait another round, I'm going to go ahead and cross?
If somebody wants to go from the, and forgive me, I don't know the pizza restaurant's name, but from there to...
Many Olivia's.
Thank you. If we can minimize the amount of crossings that people have, going across Milton Avenue and then going across Roswell Street, Canton Street, that's a safety measure that we would like to pursue. So for them to just go diagonal, it could take less time depending on when they get to the light cycle, but it's also going to provide least amount of impact to the vehicles of having a pedestrian and a vehicle potentially get hit.
Okay. Well, I came away from our discussion where I thought you had said, and this is a while back, and it was my confusion, that there might be 1 or 2 cycles of vehicles going before the pedestrians would go, and they would have to wait for a while.
I mean, once we get through that design process, we'll come back and we'll bring forward what's going on, and then we'll be modifying and tweaking that design that best fits that intersection.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Thanks, sir. Ms. Cobb, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone here wants to come and speak on the scramble, now's your opportunity. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to award RFP 22-110 to Brooks, Berry, Haney and Associates for the design and construction of the Milton Avenue and Canton Street / Roswell Street scrambled sidewalk in an amount not to exceed $103,160 and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Burnett and a second by Councilman Binder. Any discussion? Councilman Hypes?
As usual, I often appreciate the creativity of my fellow council members, and I want to start out with saying something positive. And we discussed this in the retreat, and you know, I truly, if it passes, hope that this all works out. But because we have to balance our budget, when you come with an unbudgeted item, something else is going to pay the price on the fly. And when we approve a budget, we're making determinations about where we prioritize things. I'm looking at the budget that we voted on tonight, and I think it's interesting. A community development planner is exactly $103,000, and this particular intersection, while it might be fun to have a scramble, and it may back cars up in front of a brand new 4-star hotel valet parking with a new school opening up and with pressure on Highway 9, and while it may back up people down at Lily Garden Way who were just in here a few weeks ago concerned about their ability to get out, I'm not sold on the idea that this is a good budget priority given all of our other needs. And I cannot, from a fiscal standpoint and uncertain on how this will play out, I cannot support this.
Any other comments? All those in favor of the motion to approve the design build pedestrian scramble at the intersection of Milton Avenue and Canton Street, Roswell Street, in an amount not to exceed $103,160, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. Can you wipe mine? Sorry, guys. And it does pass 4-3.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, sir. That'll wrap up the new business portion of tonight's meeting. If there's anyone here that's just been sitting there waiting to make another public comment, now's your opportunity. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Any reports? Councilwoman Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Want to remind everyone our community zoning information meeting is this Wednesday night via Zoom at 6 o'clock. We have 4 public hearing items that will be presented. Also want to mention that Ben Kern and his wife Holly brought in a new baby girl this weekend into their family. Juniper, baby girl Juniper. So congrats to Ben and his wife Holly. And then it's actually not an update, but I wanted to ask Bob, I know that we've been told that the MOU with Milton, for the parks, softball and football and special needs program, that it's been put on hold from our side. But I'd like to see if we could put the component of that MOU on the agenda for our next meeting, which deals with the special needs camp. Those camps started this week, and I really don't want the Milton and Alfreda families to be impacted because we're delaying it regarding football and softball issues. So I'd like to see if we could bring that forward as an agenda item at our next meeting.
Thank you for bringing that up. I don't believe there should be any impact because we've never charged any non-residents fees amongst special needs programs, but it was certain.
Just the coincidence was that they're not excluded from getting into it. If there's opening, they want to get on the, if they want to get on the waiting list, they're still capable of doing all that. There's nothing that says if you live in Milton, you can't go, you can't.
So they're paying non-resident fee or resident?
They never have.
They've never paid any.
With special needs programs, all of North Fulton has always allowed the cities to cooperate.
So then why were they part of the MOU? I guess I'm confused.
It's a great question.
I'm very
I'll
confused.
check on that, because my information is that we are this year, and I'm not sure why, but
Well, that's a great point then, because
yeah.
my understanding was we never, Councilman Biner, I mean, this is just reports, but,
Sorry.
but, I mean, do you recall whether we've ever charged non-residence fees for special needs programs?
I don't know, but I'm a year out, so I know they've
Okay.
switched previously, so that's
No?
the first time.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Councilwoman Richard, because I've always been under the impression that none of the cities in North Fulton did that. So if that would be an impact.
I do know that when, when Milton approved the MOU and their last meeting in May, they identified about a $4,000 impact for the special needs camps that they would be absorbing without the so I'm assuming there were fees being paid.
Yeah, you'll get back to it.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that to my attention. I was unaware of that. Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell.
I just want to say it's great having Miss Sandra Johnson here tonight, a former councilwoman. I think in the history of our city, we've only had 4, and you correct me if I'm wrong. Sandra Johnson, Debbie Gibson, Cheryl Oakes, and our currently serving Miss Karen Richard, which I think adds great value to, all of you have added value to our city, so.
Can I correct you?
Welcome back. Karen Richard.
No. I actually was going to correct you on my last name, but thank you for the self-correction. It is Richard, singular. We've actually had 5.
Who am I leaving out?
And I can't not, I recall it was a woman in the Windward community, and Ms. Cook is coming to rescue me here.
Barbara.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Thank you.
Total of 5.
And if I can add to that Ms. Johnson was on the council when I was hired. So special to me, and you can blame Sandra.
I was going to say, we'll try not to hold that against her.
And we do.
I was on the council when I was hired too. I don't know if she voted for me. But
Any other reports? All right. Well, unfortunately, I do have to ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session.
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Merkel and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mitchell for us to adjourn this meeting into executive session. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate it. All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Good night, everyone.